Set up for me.
Hi, my name is Isaiah Ruby.
Hi, my name's Sam Barlow, and we will be interviewing Shirley Chojnacki on Sunday, April 25th, 2021. So just to start off the interview, you were born in 1943 in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And so back then, you saw a lot of more like house births going on. So were you born in a hospital or were you born at home?
At home.
You were born at home. Although you were young during this time, like where World War II was going on, did you have any experiences that resulted from the effects of World War II as a child?
No.
No, not a whole lot.
No, I just don't recall that far back, Sam. I don't.
And so you grew up with 5 brothers and 3 sisters. Did you grow up particularly close to any of them? Like, did you have a brother or sister that you were particularly close with?
My eldest sister, Fran. Mm-hmm.
So growing up in a household like that back then, did you have any pets as well? Any dogs, cats, anything like that?
We had a dog.
What was its name?
Sheppy. Sheppy.
Cute. What kind of dog was it, if you remember?
It was a collie.
Okay. So going to grade school back in a time like that, you see a lot of like technological differences compared to what it's like today. So what was going to grade school like back then compared to now?
See, we had a 1-room schoolhouse. There were 8 grades, and she would teach 2 grades at a time. Like the 1st and 2nd grade were together, 3rd and 4th. That's how she done the grades. Mm-hmm.
And so was it the same teacher teaching every single grade at that school?
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Warzella.
And you saw a lot of nuns and brothers being teachers back then. Was she a nun? Was she a sister?
No, let me back up. I did go until the 4th grade to Catholic school. So we did have nuns then at the Catholic school. That's when I went to St. Stanislaus. And then after I made communion, I still went to 4th grade, but then the 5th grade through 8th, that's when I went to the little public school that was just a 1-room school.
So what fostered that change between going from Catholic school to public school?
Oh, that was definitely different. You know. Why did you? Oh, because of, I think, the cost.
Okay.
Well,
The difference between private school and public school, certainly cost is a huge factor in that.
Mm-hmm. And mom and dad was the only one that worked, and there just was not the money because you had to pay tuition for a Catholic school.
Yeah.
And were the younger ones that had to go, so we just went to that grade, and then we went to the public school after I believe I made communion in the 3rd grade. But I think I still went to St. Stan's in the 4th grade, and then the 5th grade I went to the public school till 8th grade when I went to high school.
And what was the public school called?
Plover Hills Heights.
Okay. And that was in Stevens Point?
Yes.
Okay. So kids these days, I mean, me and my friends will go play basketball outside occasionally for a little bit of fun. What did you guys and your friends do for fun back then?
In the schools, we played softball against these little country schools. They would have a team and we would play baseball. At home, we let the water run and made a little skating pond. We played a lot of baseball then too. That's what we pretty much played, was those kind of games. Tag, hide and seek.
All the fun stuff.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And in your life, your father was working at that heating and cooling company, putting in furnaces for people?
Yes.
And so, like, what were his hours during the day? Would he be home at night, or was he working night shifts? Like, how did that work out?
He worked from 7 to 5. He worked 10-hour shifts. He worked 7 to 5.
Okay.
Monday, Friday. And then he was on call. If the furnaces went out and stuff, he was on call.
Mm-hmm. And so, kids these days don't have chores, taking out the garbage, fun things like that. So did you ever have chores growing up, like things you had to get done around the house?
We did. We did not have summer vacation like the children do now. We had relatives, neighbors that planted pickles, green beans, potatoes. We had to, at the age of 7, we had to pick that crop all summer long.
So you'd still get that break from school, but you're spending it, working on the farm,
Yep.
picking all those foods and whatnot.
Well, because that was to supplement the income for
Yeah.
us to have money for clothing and books and stuff for school in the fall.
So you're making that transition to middle school, and in the 50's, it was a very prosperous time economically for the U.S. in general. Did you feel any effects from that, and whether it just be in your household or in the town in general, from that economic prosperity that was going on in America?
No.
Not a whole lot of change. It just kind of, that small town mentality kind of kicked in, where it was kind of like you're almost isolated in its own sense, its own community. And so in the pre-interview, you mentioned something similar with the civil rights movement, where, it was a big thing going on in America today, but it didn't affect you a whole lot because, it's almost like you're isolated from it.
Yes. And, when I believe the first time, Sam, I seen a Black person was when I was 13 years old. My sister moved to Milwaukee because her husband got a job at the foundry. And I went there to stay with her. And that's the first time I ever seen a Black person, and we got on a bus, but they had to sit to the back of the bus. They could not, sit where we did. They had to sit to the back. Also, when we went out to eat, at the cafes, they could not be seated where we were. They had a corner, and it was roped off, and they had to stand and eat. But I never, we did not see that in our town. It was just small. You didn't see them there. They weren't in the area.
Yeah, so it didn't affect you a whole lot, but did you hear about things like the bus riots going on down south and a lot of the movements? You heard about it?
Yes, we heard all that. We did. And I remember, what Martin Luther King, a lot of his speeches and how that all, I remember that somewhat, how they were trying to change all that.
So what was your town's opinion on all those things going on? It was just kind of an afterthought because it seemed so far away, or were a lot of people involved in things like that?
No, they were not. And you did not hear about, you didn't hear about that. They really didn't talk about the Blacks and stuff. They just did not.
It wasn't even addressed. It
No,
just seemed like such an afterthought at the time. And so when you moved on to high school, did all your friends from your middle school go to the high school, or did you see some diversification where they went to other high schools?
Well, some did, but some went to the Maria. That was a Catholic girls' high school. And the boys was over, it's not where the big Pacelli is now. It was a smaller school by the YMCA. Some went there, but some did go to high school, but some of them did go to the Catholic school. Because we did come from a very strict Catholic family. So we didn't really have a lot of, relatives or that went to the schools because they could afford to stay in the Catholic school. And then they went to the Catholic high schools, but we didn't have that privilege.
So in high school, I kind of mentioned the same thing with grade school, but did you see a lot of differences in what you'll see now? Because the high school environment, it's so predicated on things like cell phones, computers, things like that. What was the environment in high school like back then?
We did not have that. No, they didn't have any of that. We had a gymnasium that we all, went into play different games, do our, activities in there. We didn't have the access to any of that. I remember even when I went to home economics, they would have us bake biscuits. It's nothing like that now at all. Make jelly. I mean, that's what we done back in our day. Yeah.
So big things about high schools, going to football games, dances, other events like that. Did you go to football games or go to sports events with your friends in high school? Was that a big thing?
Occasionally we did. Go to a football game, to a dance, but we just never, because our school wasn't that close that we had to have a ride to that, and we did not have that ride. I never ever went to a prom because we just could not afford a dress, any of that for us. We just never got to do that. No, I didn't have, a lot of the children that went to school did have, pencils, all that. We didn't have that. We just didn't. We couldn't afford it. We would ask the student next to us to give us a paper, a pencil, and we didn't have that at all.
So with something like money being tight, did the church play a huge role in like helping out and being like the sense of community for you?
No.
So around your time in high school, things like NASA were starting to get government funding, and you saw like the space race starting to begin. The Cold War was starting to get in the full momentum. Although you had like this sense of like isolation growing up in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, did you hear a lot about the Cold War and the space race and between the Russians and here?
And I do recall of that somewhat, but not, as I just don't recall of a lot of that. My elder sister, I was talking to her, and that she does remember, that, but I don't remember really that. I remember the Cuban Missile, with that, and then Kennedy stuff, but I don't know where I was. I don't remember the Cold War.
So going back to like those technological differences between high schools now and high schools back then, I'm assuming you guys had chalkboards. I mean, we have whiteboards nowadays that, easily erase off, and then you have chalkboards back then. Was that like a big thing? Were chalkboards like the main medium that the teachers would use for teaching classes back then?
That's what it was. All the chalkboards. We took turns washing the chalkboards. The boys filled the stove in the back with wood to heat the school. That's what it was. Yeah, we learned really often. Yeah. Yeah, we done chores at school. Filled the water. Some would pass. You probably never heard of a goiter tablet.
No.
Okay, back in our time, they used to give us goiter tablets. And we would get those, I think it was once a week for sure, twice. And that's what we had to do. Bring in, pass that out, bring in the wood. We all had to do those kinds of things to fill the wood there. The boys done the stove, though we never had to fire the stove. But I remember these big crock-like things that were wet water. We had to go pump the water outside and fill those big crock barrel things for the water. And we had paper cups, and you turn that on and you got your water. That's how we got our water out of there.
So you mentioned how your grade school and middle school were like one-room schoolhouses. Was high school similar in that way, or was high school a bigger building?
It was bigger, and we had different classrooms, like for math, history. We had separate classrooms for that.
And then in the pre-interview, you mentioned that your house didn't have running water at the time, and you had to go pump water, and you had an outhouse that you would use the bathroom in.
Nope, we didn't have a bathroom. We used the outhouse. The pump was down the basement, and we take a pail, and me and my siblings, we each had to take a turn. And that's, pump the water and get it up stairs. And we each had to do that. We had to take turns doing that.
And then the Stevens Point community, was that like something that was common between different households? Was that you had to go pump water and had an outhouse?
Not, in the city, it was different. But and now, I guess you could say it is the city where it's not annexed to it, but everything there on 39, because I had a picture there of Isaiah to show him of our home and my dad's vehicle, and there was a field there. Okay, that field now is 39, Interstate 39, and we used to play in that field out there, us children did.
If you want, you can go ahead and grab the photo and show us.
You see it, Isaiah?
You want to hold it a little bit higher? A little bit up more?
Can you?
Just a little bit up higher.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, okay. Can you see that car?
Yeah.
In the field? Okay. 11 of us used to fit in that car on a Sunday.
What year was that picture taken?
We're thinking, oh,
Probably late 40s, I think.
what am I? I'll be 78, and I think I was maybe about 7 or 8 on there, on that picture. So, 50,
So 1950s.
Fif-
So about
1950 maybe.
yeah. I was born, yeah, maybe even earlier because I was born in 43. So if I was about 1950,
Mhm.
that vehicle might be a 48. It's not new.
so 71 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you remember what kind of car it was? Like a Ford or a?
38 Ford.
38 Ford, I think it was a 38 Ford, a 2-door yet.
And the entire house and everything around it is now the interstate?
No, the home is still there, Isaiah.
Oh, the home is, okay.
But the land that you see on there, that is Interstate 39. It's very close to the home. It's fenced, they put a fence there.
And so was your house farther outside of the city, or was it close to the city of Stevens Point?
I was gonna say, that would have been the country then, Sam.
Okay.
We lived in the country then. Now it's very close to Stevens Point, Fleet Farm and all that is there. Yeah, now it would be very close to city living. But back then in that, we didn't have as many homes. But the majority of them did have the outhouses, but I believe we had them longer than, some of our neighbors. Just because of all the children, we could not afford the plumbing.
So you had to use a water pump for your source of water?
Yeah, we pumped the water. Mhm.
Would that ever have any complications in the winter with things freezing over? Or were you able to remedy that?
That's why that was in the basement,
Okay.
because the furnace was down there and that somewhat heated that area, that the water didn't freeze.
And so you mentioned that you didn't finish high school. Is that correct?
Oh, no, I did not.
So what caused you that made you want to leave high school, or what caused that?
Babysat, took on jobs babysitting just for money for the family. So the family could survive. We babysat, the money went to the parents, and we just never finished our educations and married young.
So after high school or even during high school, maybe, when did you meet your eventual spouse?
Florian is not the one I met in high school. I was married before. And I met him in high school, my first husband, Frank.
In what year did you and Frank get married?
1960.
Did you get married in Stevens Point?
Yes.
And so did that partially have to do with you dropping out of high school to help get money to provide for your family?
And I think that's what it was. You moved on, you married. My sister was only 16. I don't know. It was just like, you moved on to raise your own family, and the parents didn't have that load of, afford to take care of us. Not that it was easier for us to do that, but we did. Mhm.
And how old were you when you got married?
I was 17.
And did you already have a child?
No,
Or no?
Kurt after that.
Right after that?
So what was your first job out of high school? Was it babysitting?
Yes. I used to babysit, and then I would clean homes. I cleaned home for a lady, and I took care of her parents. I'd cook and clean her home.
So as a young woman at the time, looking for a job to help provide for your family, did the gender norms of the time, there's a whole sense of that women were supposed to be the homemakers and men were supposed to go doing the money. Did that ever affect you in trying to get a job and making money?
No, because when I had Kurt right after, and then I had Robin, I did work at the produce company, so we really got jobs like that, but wage was only 75 cents an hour, but we did get jobs like that to help out.
So as a practicing Catholic back in that time, Vatican II was coming around in the early 60s to make a lot of changes for the church. Did you ever experience any of those changes from Vatican II very significantly? The changes from the Latin Mass and other things they talked about in Vatican II?
I do remember the Latin masses. See, we went to church every morning when we went to Catholic school. Every morning we went to church. And I do remember them doing some of the masses in Latin. But you know, when we kind of went to school, to the public schools, I think we lost track of a lot of that with the Catholic religion, you know, what the churches were doing.
Yeah. So a big part of your experience in the 60s was the Point Beer riots in Stevens Point, with your husband being a police officer at the time.
Yeah.
What was your first experience with those Point Beer riots?
You know, I remember the riots. I mean, it was kind of a shaky thing for us in this area. I'm thinking, why did it have to come to Stevens Point? You know, the Governor Knowles, that was passing that law to, you know, right from 18 to 21. But I think the reason it was in Stevens Point because we had the brewery, and the college just kind of started, you know, growing over there. And that's why I think it ended up that we were in that Point Beer riot with that, is because of the college. The kids didn't like it. They felt if you could vote at 18, you should drink at 18, not change it to 21. And back then, men could get married at 18. And that's how they felt. Well, you know, if you could do that, why can't we drink at 18? And that really set off quite a mess here.
So what was your personal experience with it? So you mentioned that wasn't your husband at the time a police officer helping to deal with that?
Florian, my husband now, he was, but I was not married to him at the time, you know, when the riot, but I recall of the riot. I remember that all going on, and he was involved in the riot because he was a police officer then.
So you mentioned one of the big parts of the riots is they were tipping the trucks over. Did that cause, so was that in the city of Stevens Point, or was that outside city limits?
It was in Stevens Point at, you know, and I want to say they even started some fires like on the intersections, but they did tip the beer truck, and then they stole beer out of the big beer trucks, things like that. Not just mischievous, they were mischievous is what it was, but not that it ever got deadly or, you know, force that you had to work. You know, I think one police officer, his thumb got hurt or something, but that's was the extent of it. You know, it never got out of control like it does now, that they take lives and stuff.
Yeah. And so what ultimately caused those riots to stop? Was it just like a one night thing, or were they continually going, or what caused them to stop?
You know, I don't know if it went on for more than, I think it was like maybe a weekend, you know, Friday and Saturday. They got it under control, you know, and then when the governor left, see, I think what caused the riot is he came here by the hotel. It was a Hotel Whiting. And I think when they spotted him there, that's what set everything off. And they knew he was coming back to town. And that's why that riot really, you know, started, because of him being in town.
So you have like these big events, you know, that go on throughout the entire United States. You have things like the moon landing, the Cuban Missile Crisis, but then you have also these local events like the Point Beer riots. Were there any other significant local events that went on at the time, like comparable maybe to the Point Beer riots, or any significant local events?
Not that I can recall of.
And so, I mean, one of the biggest events that did happen in the U.S. sphere was the moon landings. Do you remember hearing about the moon landing? Do you remember where you were when you heard when he landed on the moon?
I lived in Plover, you know, but I do. But when we did live in Florida, I don't know if you were going to go ask me questions on that or not, Sam. But when we did live in Florida, we did live in Lake Alfred. And I don't know if you recall of when that teacher and them that exploded and they died in that, yeah, that there, we could see that when that rock that took off from where we lived, and you could see the explosion when it did, because Todd, he could come into the house, and Junior, the boys, and they said, something happened, and we run out there, and they were watching as they done it, and you could see that explode in the sky. And then when we put the TV on, we heard how that had, you know. And
So what were you doing that day when they
I
finally?
worked nights, so I was sleeping because I worked at Minute Maid, and the kids went to watch that because they knew they were in the yard, that they were, and you could see it from there when they'd shoot that off, and they come in, and so then I woke up and we went out there, and you could see the debris, you know, like from when it exploded, and they had it on TV, and that I recall of that.
So you moved to Florida. What caused you to move to Florida for a few years at that point?
We lost our home in a fire. Just, I don't know, try something different. My husband just wanted to, you know, move, and we went and we purchased a laundromat down there, but we came back.
How was the laundromat business?
Oh, there it was good because we were in Auburndale, Florida, and that done well because over there, like I said, they call them the transients that pick the fruit and stuff. So they had to do their laundry, and a lot of them did not have, you know, washers and dryers. So that done well there. That it's still there in that shopping center.
Yeah, washers and dryers are something I think we take for granted nowadays. You know,
Right.
it's such a common commodity nowadays. But back then, a laundromat could be a huge help for people in the community like that.
And, you know, in Auburndale, a lot of Black people lived in that area that did not have washers and dryers because they lived in their small homes and they just didn't, you know, have those. So the laundry business was very good over there. You know, the laundromat, we done well in that.
So was it different living in a more diverse community than Stevens Point? Because you mentioned that there are more Black families down there. Did that present a big change?
That was different. It definitely was. It was different. I think I was not frightened of, you know, we didn't have crimes in our little town like we did there. And I took it, I don't know, I just didn't feel people could hurt people like that. But we did have an incident, and lucky I didn't go over there when I went to clean the laundromat. That a gentleman across the street, he had a beauty school, and the door kept opening, and I thought, what is going on? Then the police came. Well, I'm glad I didn't go there, Sam, because somebody had murdered him in there. And see, I would have probably just went there to shut his door, and I could have, you know. So that's the difference of that little town living than what it is. You couldn't, you know, I had to change my whole way of living over there because it was totally different than what we did, and we lived back home in Point.
Yeah. So you mentioned you worked at Minute Maid fruit plant.
Yes.
So what was your specific job there?
I worked, I used to do cleanup, like, you know, and then grade on the grader, grade the fruit.
So you had the laundromat, you had the Minute Maid fruit plant. What else did you do in Florida during your time there?
Picked fruit. Well, he didn't pick it, but he did have, you know, the pickers come in and do the fruits for them. They would pick. They were very, we kind of give them a grief about the border, you know, when they're coming in from Mexico, but those people worked hard and they did pick that fruit. What I remember when we had the freeze, wish I could remember what year it was in Florida, it was bad. And a lot of the fruit would have rotted, and they did come in and pick it, and we put it on fruit trucks. Well, we worked 24/7. You know, we had to work, they did, to just make concentrate out of that. And I said, I know if it would have not been for them, that fruit would have not gotten picked. They just, you know, they're hardworking people. I just have a different outlook on them.
Yeah, so the Mexican population was also big in your town in Florida, helping out with the farms and everything.
You know, it's not that they live there. they brought them in more or less at the fruit time with the oranges and the strawberries and watermelon when Plant City, was the capital of Florida for the strawberries. That's when they came in, but you did not see them there they did not reside there that I seen them in our area anyway.
This may seem like a basic or menial question, but did you enjoy like the warm weather difference that Florida presents compared to Wisconsin?
I did enjoy the warm weather, but the summer was so hot. It was like it would have been a cold winter for me in Wisconsin. The heat is unbearable there in the summer. It is. So I don't know, but otherwise the weather was nice. But I don't know. It was just, I was nervous about some of the crime that went on coming from a small town. I didn't feel real good about staying there where people do, but I just, where we were, I just was nervous about that. I didn't like the crime.
So describe your town that you lived in Florida. Was it like a smaller town, a bigger town than what you were used to in Stevens Point?
And Auberdale is where the laundromat was. And we lived about probably 3 miles. We bought a small home in Lake Alfred from there, 5 miles it was. And there too, there were blacks there, but they were fenced off on the other side of the road from our complex. They were not to come into our area. And that went on there, and let's see, when did we live there? 80 to 85 or 86. So see, they were still with that there, that they didn't want, the people didn't want them in that subdivision area. They were, and now I don't believe it's even there. I haven't been there, but my son went and he said that it no longer exists there. It's just totally different homes. And he said, I wouldn't even recognize the small town now because I think he said the building and the homes, nice homes that were built there, I think people with money moved out and those little places that had that, it's just no longer there.
So you saw this sense of segregation even well into the 80s back then.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's kind of interesting, despite all like the laws that have been put in place and things like that, it still presented this, you still saw it going on because of the feelings of the people.
It was. And I said we had one little boy that Sam, he was, black, and he would come play with Junior was the youngest, our son, and he was like around his age, and he'd come over and play, but you could tell the neighbors let us know they didn't appreciate it. Where Junior was 5 years old, he couldn't figure that out. He loved everybody. He come from a small town, he didn't. What was the difference that I could not play with him? So you did see that. I think you will still see that, Sam. I really do.
So moving on from, what ultimately made you want to come back to Wisconsin from Florida?
I had some health issues and I just wanted to come be closer to home.
And so what did you do once you got back to the Stevens Point area? Did you move back into you moved back into a different house?
Yeah, we did. Mm-hmm. And then my husband found a job at the paper mill at Kimberly-Clark. I did go back to the produce company I worked for, but then we got into managing these apartments and I gave that up for a while and I went to work at Menards, and a realtor used to come in there. And so then I went to school for real estate, and I'd done real estate for a while. Mm-hmm. And then when I retired, I did work, I done real estate, worked at an assisted living, and I managed apartments all at the same time. But then I was ready to retire. I retired at 62. And then I gave up on the real estate and I managed a property for a company in Brookfield, Wisconsin, and they owned it here, and I managed that till I was 73. Then I finally retired, Sam.
So going back to the Menards job, what was your job at Menards?
Worked in wall coverings. That's like wallpaper. I helped set the store up over there, the one in Plover, because it was one of the first ones in our area there. But I worked in wall coverings, and then I did also help in floor coverings, hardware, done, wherever they needed, I helped there.
And so when did you move on from Menards to more of a real estate oriented type career?
When did I get into real estate? Gosh. And I was in that for a while. I'm not sure what. It had to be in the late 90s. Because this is 2021. Yeah, late 90s. I would have gotten real estate. I was in that for a while.
So you were self-educated in real estate. So how did you originally like get into it?
This gentleman that was a realtor, he owned a company, and he would just come over there to Menards and said I should get into that, try that. So I did, and then I went to school in Appleton, and they have a course. I had to go to school. I think it was 8 weeks that I had to go there every day. Had to go to school, and now maybe for some it's easy, but it was kind of a tough class to take, But they have different, tell you what you can, encroachments and this and that. It's not, But then after I got done with that, then I went into the same company in Brookfield managing, because they called looking. I was doing real estate, and he called to see if I'd be interested in coming back. So I guess I always like to work.
I think we might have to disband the meeting and come back because I think we're running out of time.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why it does that.
Yeah, so we'll have to end the meeting, and then we can call you right back, and we can
Okay,
start
sure.
interviewing again.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So I wanted to talk about kind of like your love life and just all your marriages. Did you want to talk a little bit about meeting your first husband, where you met him and how?
In school.
In school? All right. And you guys were in the same grade, or was he like older?
He
or
was.
younger? He was older?
He was 2 grades ahead of me.
But were you all in the same classrooms?
No, not in the same classrooms. It's just Isaiah. We in the halls.
In the halls.
We met each other, and
Okay.
I don't recall of him being in my classes, but like at the school, we'd hang around in the halls during recesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I met him.
And then do you remember like how long you guys were together before you got married?
Almost 2 years.
2 years. And this was you had dropped out of high school by this point, correct?
Yep.
And did he finish high school?
No.
No. So you were okay.
No.
And then do you remember anything about like your wedding day and like the ceremony? Did you guys have a ceremony?
Yeah, we did. We were married in the Catholic Church. Same
Okay.
state.
And was it a big ceremony, small ceremony?
No, it was big. It was a large wedding we had.
Okay.
Back then, Isaiah, you got married at 9:00, and at 10:00 you went to the hall, and they had breakfast there, and then they drank and danced till 5:00 at night. They did, and then they had a large meal, chicken dinner and stuff at 5. That ended at 7. And then you danced and drank some more, and it ended at midnight.
And then did you move in together right after marriage, or were you already like moved in together?
No, we didn't live together. We moved when we married.
Okay. And then how long after you married did you have your first child?
Kurt was born in April. We married in October, and Kurt was born in April.
Okay, so it was like pretty soon after.
Yeah, 7 months?
And then how many kids did you end up having in this marriage?
5.
5? Okay. And then how was that like in your household with like, were you like kind of like a stay-at-home mom with all the 5 kids running around?
It was just not, I was young. He was young. Just not probably not ready for marriage. You know,
No.
he just still like to play his baseball, be with his friend. It just wasn't good. And eventually I just left before I had more children.
And so then, when did you end up meeting your second husband?
In 1971.
And how long after your first marriage was this?
Oh gosh. I think maybe I was alone for 5 years.
5 years. So you were alone with 5 kids. How was that experience?
It was tough. It was.
What?
We definitely had to live on a strict,
Mhm.
budget. There wasn't much for money. I walked to work cleaning hotel rooms after they went to school, and support was not paid, so I worked part-time, and then you would get like help from the government somewhat, but like I lived on $310 a month with 5 children. There were 6 of us, so it was really tough. It was tough.
Yeah. Sounds really hard. Sounds like it would take a very strong person to do that. And how would you explain like the environment of the household like at the time of when you were by yourself versus like now?
I think the children enjoy, I don't know, I think they had a rough life, but it's not that there was abuse or anything like that.
It was just hard.
It was hard, and I think there wasn't no money. I mean, we could not go do things like go to carnival, functions I just didn't have the money for that. We didn't go to that. We would walk over, I would with the children to the school, the old Emerson school, and there was a playground there, and that was our Sunday thing, Isaiah. We went to play on the playground on Sunday. That's what as far as food, there was food, but not in abundance. Back then, they used to give USDA commodities, and we lived on a lot of that. Oatmeal, cheese. That was how we survived. Money was very tight.
And then how did you eventually meet your second husband?
I don't remember.
No?
I was out, in the evening at the bar, and he was grandpa. I'll call him grandpa. He was there. But we went together for a while with, I lived in that small house on College Avenue, and then we moved over on 4th Avenue. That's when they had the low income homes they were building. They were like duplexes. And I was waiting I didn't have a vehicle, Isaiah. I did not drive till I married Grandpa. I was about 31, 32 years old. We walked to get our food, pushed a cart. There was a grocery store that wasn't far. When I got paid once a month, we would go push that cart to the grocery store. We'd fill it up, take that food home, and then take the cart back. I had no means of transportation. Like we couldn't go for a Sunday drive or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want that.
I had a taxi.
Yeah.
To the dentist.
Yeah, taxi would pick them up when we had to go to dentists and things like that. And then there was a homemaker that would come in and help me, like cans, sew, things like that. But I didn't have a vehicle.
And then how long after you met your current husband did you guys get married?
About 2 years, little over 2 years.
2 years? Okay. And then how many kids did you end up having together in this marriage?
5 years later, we had one child.
One child? Okay. And then once you guys got married, did like the money situation get a little bit better?
Yeah, that was better because
Yeah.
Grandpa did a good job. He worked at the fire department and he painted, but then he had a meat market, he bought, and there were some businesses, so we worked that, and the money was better. The homes were better. Yeah.
And how many homes did you guys live in during like this time?
When we married, the first time we lived on Alder Avenue. That was the first home we bought, and then we bought that one out in Custer. That was the home that burned.
And how big were they? Were they like smaller homes, bigger homes?
No, the first one was a 3-bedroom ranch, but the one in Custer was a 4-bedroom. That was a bigger bi-level home, and it was on 10 acres.
Okay, so a pretty big plot of land.
Yeah,
And then after it burned down, that's when you moved to Florida.
we rented a home, but that's when we decided that we were gonna, go to Florida, and we purchased a home over there in Lake Alfred. That wasn't a real big home, but like by then, the only one home was Todd and Junior, the youngest.
You only had 2 kids home.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And then when you moved back from Florida, you had a pretty nice sized home.
We bought a new mobile home.
Mhm.
And then when we sold that, we built that home in Custer shortly after. The one on Old 18, and it's still there.
Yeah.
We sold that, and then we just live in this small little 2-bedroom one now.
And you lived in your previous house for a very long time, correct?
I think it was 22, 23 years, maybe 23.
And then you ended up selling the house to one of your sons, correct? Is that kind of like, I don't know, does that feel like kind of like fulfillment that you get to like, he gets to carry on his children in your home
Right.
that you guys built together?
That's nice. And it's nice to see, the 2 grandchildren. Well, they're so young. Isaiah, you're one of the older great-grandchildren. Now I got 2 grandchildren are only going to be 5 and 7. But I enjoy that they're in that home when we go there that day. And
Mm-hmm.
I still like that the home is in the family. We built that,
It's kind of nice to see all the hard work you put in kind of pay off for the younger ones. And then catching up kind of to like now, I don't know if you want to take over, Sam.
Yeah, I got it. So you mentioned a lot of like businesses that your husband ran. I mean, you had the laundromat in Florida, but what were some businesses you had maybe up here in Stevens Point?
Oh, let's see. We had the laundromat in Florida, plus we had the ceramics we done in Florida. Before that, the one we lived in Amherst, we had 2 meat markets. We had one in Amherst, and then we had the other one we built in Custer. And then after we didn't have those, we got into the bar business. We had a bar in Custer. And we pretty much didn't do any business after that. After that, Grandpa done a lot of it when we were in Florida, but we did have the meat markets when we were here. But in Florida, we had the laundromat and a ceramic business. We would make the ceramics and go to the flea markets on a weekend. We sold a lot of that. And
So bars are a big part of like small communities. So when you had that bar in Custer, I believe you said, did you see like a lot of locals, a lot of like usual people coming in on different days and things like that?
Mm-hmm. And it was free drink Sunday. After you left church, you come and had your Sunday drink. It was a free Sunday drink when we had the bar. It was your locals that supported you. Now things have changed. You have to be careful with the laws, the drunk driving. It's totally different.
Yeah. So did you see like did you get to like connect with your community better, like being a part of that bar business?
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm. Yep. I think we had, our neighborhood where we lived, but with that, you got more of the people out in the country. You met more of the elderly, that did go to bars and, on Sundays and have their drinks. You communicated, we know a lot of people, and I think a lot of it was from the businesses with the meat market and the bar. We definitely did. Yeah.
This has been an opinionative question, but between like all the businesses that you've helped run, between like bars, meat markets, sort of laundromats, what was like your personal favorite and the ones that you helped oversee?
I don't know. I liked them all, but I think the meat market I did because you worked with your farmer. It was just some would come as you cut their meat, sit there. My dad worked with us then, he was still alive. And I don't know, it was just the little town itself. I enjoyed the people that lived there. And that one I do remember quite well, that I do miss that little town. It was just so close to where, drunks can get out of hand, where this was, I enjoyed that.
So in like overseeing these businesses, did you build like any meaningful connections with people that still like help or that are still going to this day?
Not pretty much, they're all gone. Yeah.
So what are your kids up to these days? Like, what are they doing for work? How are the families like?
Well, my oldest son, the eldest, he still is at the produce company. He's got a lot of years in over there. Robin, she works at the DC Ever School. Who else do we have left? Todd is maintenance. He's in fact, Todd works for the complex I used to take care of in Stevens Point, the same company out of Brookfield. He just started working for them for maintenance. So that's kind of going on. I've done that for many years with them, and now he does. Rick works at Foremost, and Junior is, he's a deputy on Portage County Sheriff's Department.
What made him want to be part of the sheriff's department?
He always kind of was like that when he was a little kid. But his dad was a policeman and a fireman. But he just like, I don't know, whenever he'd see a police officer, he'd call him a motor cop. He was going to be that one day, and he is. And then,
So,
Tammy, she passed away. Out of the 6 children, one is passed, yeah.
well, I'm sorry to hear that. So 4 years ago, you said you moved to Wisconsin Rapids.
Yep. Mhm.
What made you make that change from Stevens Point to Wisconsin Rapids?
Sold the home to our son, to our youngest son. And the time just, we didn't have the time frame to find anything. And then when we came here, we were only here about a year, and then my husband had a stroke, and then 6 months later he had bypass surgery. And so we had some health issues with that. So we just stayed in the home,
What made Wisconsin Rapids, like a desirable location to move after
Mother-in-law,
from Stevens Point?
the home that we live in, and it was available. So we rented it, and that's why we came here. But I enjoy here. I have a sister that just lives just over the tracks, not just up the road from me, and we get together often, almost every day. We walk and stuff. So, and then my son is here and his wife and stuff. So that there's family here.
So, I mean, you spent like a large portion of your life, being part of that Stevens Point community. What are some of like your favorite facets or memories from that community that like still resonate with you today?
I remember when we were young, we didn't get to go, but they used to, by the airport where in Stevens Point, that's where our carnivals used to be. Now it's the riverfront, but that's where they held the carnivals. That Iverson Park, we used to go swim there whenever we had a chance, over there. That I remember that. School plays, when we went to the one-room school, we always had at Christmas school plays, we dressed angels, and they got into that thing. I remember that. I really, recall those memories I like. Mm-hmm.
So those carnivals you mentioned that would take place at the airport, I believe you said, what were some of the common festivities and things that went on at those carnivals?
They were more or less the rides, but they had the games, like you'd shoot the little guns, to knock the dolls down and all that, you get the prizes for that. But we really never got to, we go by there and look at it, and that didn't come till really the interstate come in, that they decided to have it there, but they moved all that. But we used to just go kind of in the ditch line and watch as the kids would ride the Ferris wheel and stuff. But we really didn't have the monies. Maybe one day we could go to some, but not that, to walk the grounds, to go in maybe, but we didn't have the money to do all the rides and stuff like the children did, but we still enjoyed it. You know, it was different. It was different.
And was Stevens Point, like a tight knit community? They would come together in, times of duress and things like that. Did everybody have each other's backs and that whole small town mentality?
They did. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that's missing from a lot of communities today. The idea of having each other's backs and being there for other people.
Yeah, no, back you did. People done for, helped each other out. They didn't, not like it is now. It's just different. You could leave your door unlocked. You never had to worry about anybody coming inside. I remember when we were children, Dad and Mom never locked our door at night. We never had that fear. It's not like that now.
So moving back to your real estate career, so you oversaw how many properties was it? Like 190 something?
Managed. Mm-hmm. That's when I was a property manager. But real estate is when I sold the homes. The first year I was in real estate, I could show you that, but I can't because I gave it to my granddaughter because Kendra got into real estate when she was in Georgia. But I was $1 million seller and I had the plaque and all that from it. But I gave her that because she got into real estate. But when I still done the real estate, I done the managing before the real estate. When I went to Menards, I quit the managing over there the first time I worked for the company, and then I went to Menards, and that's when the gentleman that had the real estate company talked me into getting into it, and I did. But then I did go back into the management because he had heard I was in real estate and contacted me, and they had a property in Stevens Point they needed managing. But I didn't know, Sam, I was going to stay there for 14 years after I was 62 years old. And I enjoy that job too. It is a hassle with people, but I did enjoy that job a lot too. It was very fulfilling. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Did managing those properties or the career before, selling properties, did that prove to be stressful in a lot of situations?
Sure. Very, but I don't know. There was something about it. I liked the communication with people. That I enjoy doing it, but that can't be. I mean, you have people that don't pay the rent. If you have to, evictions, you got to go to court for evictions. See, I have to do all that. The company will get the paperwork ready, but I had to do that. And thank God, and all the time I was there, I never had like a tragedy happen in there or a fire or anything like that. They did have a fire 2 years ago, but they got a different manager. But I never had that in all that time I managed. I never had that.
Well, that's good. Not having any tragic things happen when you're overseeing that many properties. So you mentioned that you, at 62, you retired and then began to oversee more properties. And then I believe you said at 72, you finally retired from the whole real estate thing. So nowadays, what hobbies are you doing to, fill your time? Just things you like to do.
In the yard, I like flowers. I like to do flowers. We spend time with the 2 young grandchildren that we really enjoy doing. We'll go fish this summer with them in the playground and stuff. Pretty much it's that. I don't, go out and work anymore just because of my husband with his health issues and memory issues.
Well, it's good. You're spending time with your grandkids, enjoying your time. That's what you need to be doing. It's good. So are you still a member of a church today?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Does that church play a big part in like your day-to-day life, community, or just like going to mass every day, things like that?
My church is still in Stevens Point. We didn't change our church. We would still go there. But now when my husband had his stroke and heart, because of his health being so frail, then we did not, but then the COVID hit. So now they're starting it back somewhat, but we still will on Saturdays when they're back into the swing of it. We'll go back on Saturdays to church there. We still stayed with our parish there in Stevens Point because we do have, we will be buried at the cemetery and that there, so we still stay with the church there.
yeah, you have such a strong connection with it. You kind of have to, stay close with it, despite the distance difference that you may have now. So I guess one of the last questions I have is, do you have any other more pictures or like memorabilia that you would like to show us for the end of the interview?
You want to see the communion picture?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Robbie, you hold these if you can. That's my brother and me on communion.
Do you know what year that was?
Oh, don't ask me that. I was in third grade. Oh man. I think we never went to kindergarten, Sam. 6, 7, 8, probably 8 years old. I was 8 years old on there. Yeah, that would be 70 years ago, that picture. And then this is I'm looking to see who's missing here. Two more. I still had, this is my mom and my dad. Can you see that? And
Yeah.
there's still 2 that were not born yet. I had 2 brothers after that.
Which one are you in the picture?
If you can see the gal in the plaid dress down below, the lighter dress with the big smile, that's me. Oh, this I have to show you because this was the family bike. This is an old Schwinn, my brother's on it, but it was a boys' bike, but we all had to share. Can you see that?
Yeah.
All had to share that bike. And this is my grandparents on my father's side. This was their family.
Okay.
They had a large family. They came from Poland.
That's cool. I like that. It's a cool picture.
But that's it, other than when I showed him the car and stuff. Did you get that one?
Yeah, I saw the car with the plot of land where you said the interstate went through nowadays.
Yeah.
So I guess, Isaiah, and before we conclude, is there anything else you'd like to ask?
How does it feel like looking back at those pictures and looking like at all the things you've done in your life?
I enjoy it, Isaiah. I enjoy looking. We're very close as siblings. We had each other to play, as we played. We were close. We didn't go out and have friends that we could do things. We had friends, but not that we went out to do things like you do with your friends and stuff. We worked together in the fields, picking the pickles and the beans and the potatoes, and we were just all close. The boys would carry our buckets if they were too heavy to empty it, and we were just close as children because we really were together all the time.
Okay. I think that's all the questions we have for you.
Yeah.
These are still alive.
Yeah.
None of them have passed. Out of the 9, we're all alive. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Okay. Well.
All right, well,
Thank
thank you so
for your
much.
time.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Yep. You have a good day.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Bye.